Thank you, Brian. And yeah, it's good to be with you. I have known about Community of Hope since your very beginning. This is my first time actually being here, and I'm sorry it has taken me this long, but I have known about you. I've known about your church. I have known Rusty for many years. I used to meet with Rusty as a group of pastors up in Phoenix. Rusty would come up, and we would meet on a regular basis. So I know Rusty. I know you have one of the good ones here. I know that, and so I'm thankful for that. I've known Brandon for a long time, and so Brandon, it's so great to be with you and have you lead worship here and see your family once again. It's awesome, and then obviously Brian I've known for a long time too. So good to be with you, and yes, we are talking about marriage. We're going to continue the conversation about marriage, and anytime we talk about marriage, there's some level of awkwardness perhaps in the church because we're coming at it from different places. And so some of you are not yet married, and so you're considering what marriage might look like or what a second marriage might look like. And some of you are in the middle of marriage. Some of you are thriving. Some of you are struggling with that. And others of you, perhaps you're not married anymore. But a conversation about marriage can always be relevant because we can at least look back on what marriage was or what we may have learned from that, or we can look ahead to what marriage might look like again, or whatever that, whatever God's story is for you. At the very least, marriage is about relationships. So many conversation about marriage is a conversation about how we connect with one another. And God has designed us to connect with one another. And so it always is a relevant conversation. As Brian had said, and as you know, Rusty is in Kenya, which is a near and dear place for me and my heart because my wife and I met 20-some years ago in Kenya. During worship, I noticed this canvas was burlap thing up here, and it says product of Kenya, and which is right here in East Africa. My wife and I are a product of Kenya. So I'm just going to take this. Can I do that? Because Rusty won't care. He can get another one because this is awesome. We are a product of Kenya, and so that was. We've been married for 25 years. Last September we celebrated our 25th anniversary. Yeah. And they said it wouldn't last, but here we are. And so my wife was here for the first service, so I'm excited about the second service because I can say things I wasn't allowed to say in front of her. So way more fun here for the second service. But we have been married for 25 years, and almost every year on our anniversary, we will watch our wedding. It's kind of, so what happens is we'll watch it together, and my wife will be excited about watching it, and I'll pretend to be excited about watching it every year. That's kind of the way it works. And so I know everything that happened in our wedding because we watch it. I can say it word for word. And there's a moment in the wedding where the pastor, his name is Steve, he's still a good friend of mine, just a great man. And he was the pastor at our wedding, and he said at one point, he said, you know, for me and my marriage, for Steve and his marriage, he said, they have committed that divorce is not an option. And then he paused and he said, murder has at times been a serious consideration, but divorce is not an option. And we all in the wedding, we laughed, and I can see on the video that Tammy and we kind of leaned back a little bit and laugh, and oh, that's so cute and so funny. But we had no idea. Like in that moment when he said that, we had never had a fight. Like we were just, it was our wedding day, and we were in La La Land. Oh, I love you more. No, I love you more. You know, that's where we were in that. And it takes years of marriage to realize just how truly awkwardly funny that comment is. I mean, it takes years of marriage to really understand the depth of that comment because marriage is hard. Every marriage is hard. Every marriage, it doesn't matter where you're from, what your background is, every marriage is hard. Even those who love Jesus deeply have experienced very difficult moments in marriage. I remember about 12 years ago, I pastored up at Mountain Park Church in Phoenix for a number of years. And a number of years ago, there was a couple that came up to me, and at that time, they had celebrated their 25th anniversary. And the wife had said to me, you know what, we've been married for 25 years, and we've never had a fight. And I remember my first response was, oh, how awful. I remember thinking, if you think you've never had a fight, that means you're just not being honest. That means you're just not, the marriage is relationship is not designed for you not to have a fight for 25 years. I mean, we fight. That's what happens. But part of the marriage thing is we disagree and we have to work it out. And it is hard. It is hard. It is hard. It is hard. So why do we do it? Why do we endure the difficulty of this relationship? What is the purpose of marriage? Why do we go through seminars and spend a whole day with Brian? Why do we, I don't know, why do we watch videos and we listen to messages and we buy books and to figure out how to go to counseling and all of this? What it's not. That the purpose of marriage is not to make you happy. And that's a hard one to get over, because when we're dating and in la la land, yeah, I love you more. That's kind of what it feels like. But the purpose of marriage is not to make you happy. It's not for procreation. It's not so that you can look good when you go to a party because you got some person next to you. It's not for financial gain. I love this phrase up here. It's a reminder, as you're just kind of walking through whatever is being taught here, whatever Rusty or others are teaching here, whatever during worship, it's not about us. And marriage is not about me and my happiness. And that is just a message that in America we find hard to embrace. It's because it's the pursuit of happiness. So marriage should be the pursuit of happiness. But it's not about us. The purpose of marriage, and this is the whole point of today. I'm going to spend 30 minutes or whatever, 20 whatever minutes, simply saying one thing. And I should just say it and then sit down. That's what I should do. That's what preachers should do. But no, we like to spread it out over 30 minutes. But the message is this. The purpose of marriage is to make you a better person. The purpose, the difficulty, of this relationship is to make you a better person. God designed marriage. He set up on this planet an equal number of men and women so that we would walk around awkwardly trying to find one another, and we would pair up over the centuries. And as we paired up, he knew it was going to be difficult. And in this relationship that is the most beautiful and intimate and difficult of all human relationships, that what can happen in that relationship is that you become a better person if you allow God to work through your marriage and allow that to happen. Even if you're struggling, even if you're unequally yoked, whatever your story is, you can become a better person through the marriage relationship. Would you pray with me as we head into this? God, I know that there's so many different stories here in the room. So you know beautifully, you know every story. You know our hearts, you know our fears, you know our hopes. You know whether we fought on the way into church today. You know what's going to happen this week, what's ahead of us. God, you know it all. And so God, in your omnipotence, God, would you come in here and just lead us, guide us, help us to understand what your plan is, what your path is for marriage. Not ours, not Rusty's, not Alan's, not Brian's. God, what is your plan for our marriage? We want to hear and feel and experience that here today. We pray in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. So I want to start by going all the way back to the very beginning of the story, the very beginning of the Bible story, Genesis chapter 2. And what I'm going to do over the next, however long it takes, I'm going to look at every book of the Bible. Just kidding. I'm just going to, and God enjoyed what he created. What we find in Genesis chapter 1 is that God created the moon and the sun and saw that it was good, and God created the mountains, and God created the cacti, and God created hummingbirds. And I love hummingbirds. They're just, whatever I'm doing, I have to stop if there's a hummingbird. It's just the most gorgeous, beautiful little animal, and God created that and said, it is good. And God created puppies and said, good. And God created kittens, and he said someday people are going to watch videos about these things, and it's going to be unbelievable. And so God created it all. He said, it is so good, it's so good. And then God created man and said, not so good. If you recall, if you remember, this is what God said, it is good, it is good, it is good. And then in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, the Lord God said, he's talking about Adam, it is not good for the man to be alone. God said it is good throughout all of creation. And then when he looked at Adam, he said it is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. It is not good for man to be alone. Men in isolation is a bad thing. But it's not just men, it's humans. When we get hurt, when we experience pain, and we choose the path of isolation, of separating from people, we make things worse because we are better with people. Relationships make us better. The reason this was brought, God said it is not good for Adam to be alone. He needs people. I will make a suitable helper for him. And the relationships, set aside marriage, relationships make us better. So it seems reasonable that marriage, the greatest of all relationships, marriage, the relationship that is the most intimate and powerful and difficult of all relationships, it seems reasonable that that would be the best pathway for us to become better people. It is the most powerful and effective way for us to become better people. It is not good for humans to be alone, for men to be alone, for women to be alone. We are better because of the marriage relationship. And what's unique about the marriage relationship, unlike all other relationships, is it is designed, God's design for it, our culture has shifted from this, but God's design for it is to say, I will be with you through it all. That in any other relationship, it's okay to say to your parents, I love you, I thank you for all the relationships. I feel called, or I feel like it's time for me to move to a different state or move to a different country. And so I'll check in and, we'll see how that goes and I'm going to miss you and all that. It's okay to say to a friend, hey, we're besties, but it's time for me to move on. And then months later, you find a new best friend and all that. That's painful and that can be difficult, but that's okay. That is not sinful. It is in the marriage relationship alone that we are not supposed to think and say those things. It is in the marriage relationship alone that we say, through it all, no matter what, we are not going to be alone because we have one another. Even if the one another can be frustrating, because marriage is always difficult. Marriage is always hard. Every marriage is difficult. And so that's the tension there. It is the gift of that relationship to be together through it all, and marriage. Every marriage has moments that are hard. Every marriage. So God looked at Adam and he said, it is not good for him to be alone. God didn't look at Adam and said, you're incomplete without a woman. He didn't look at Adam and say, you're incomplete because, and so I'm going to give you a suitable partner. That's not what he said. In fact, later on in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, he says, this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Jesus actually talks about these exact words, and Jesus uses the phrase, he says, two become one flesh. And it's mathematics, it's bad mathematics, but it is part of God's plan is that two become one. It's not two halves become one. Mathematics says two halves become one. Jesus says it's two wholes. Two whole, 1 plus 1 equals 1. It's not that Adam was an incomplete person. We are not to Jerry Maguire one another and say, you complete me. No, your spouse doesn't complete you. You are a complete and whole person. But when we come together as two complete wholes, and we come together mysteriously, miraculously in this marriage relationship, it is the unique place where God can do amazing transformations in you, because the purpose of marriage is to make you a better person. Relationships make us better. Let me give you an example. For me, I'm not naturally a detailed person. My wife is a detailed person, so there might be a situation where she is somewhere else and I'm at home, and she wants me to bring a bag with me when I go to meet her. And so then she will write me an email and say, hey, Alan, it's really important. Here's the bag that I want you to bring, and here's why it's important. And so please bring this bag with you. And she'll set it all up. I see a couple snickering over here, which I love. That means they understand already where I'm going with this. Okay, so then she'll text me about 10 minutes before I'm leaving and say, hey, love you, just want to remind you, bring the bag, that would be awesome. And what she has done before she left is she took the bag and she set it on top of my shoes. Right on the doorway, there would be the pathway that I would go in to get into my car, and she would take the car keys and put them inside my shoes underneath the bag to make sure that I did not forget the bag. And then I am the kind of person, please pray for and, for my wife. Because I'm the kind of person that in that situation, got the email, got the text, I'm running late now, I'm in a hurry. I'm the kind of person who removes the bag, takes the keys, puts them in my pocket, puts on my shoes, and I have good intentions through all of this. I'm not trying to make a mistake or whatever. I set the bag down, and then I head out, and I go, yep, I'm on my way to see my wife, so excited to do whatever it is we were doing, and then she gets so upset with me because I messed up again. I'm a more detailed person. I get through more days because of my wife. I'm a better person, even though I mess up, so often. Now, to be fair and balanced, she's a better person because of me. And I can accentuate that more that she's not here. I can try to make that point a little bit better here in this service. But my wife, I'll hear from her, and she'll say that she's hanging out with her friends for an entire day. And so they will be together from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. and with a good group of friends. And she'll come back and she'll tell me about it. And she'll tell me that for the whole day, they didn't laugh at all. They met, they talked, they cried, they listened, they prayed, they cried some more, they listened, and they were with one another, and they didn't laugh the whole day. And I would just tell her, that is sinful. That is just sinful. When you get together with friends, you've got to find something to kind of break you can't just cry and talk and listen all the time. Come on. And so I would just try to help her. Part of my job in our marriage and our family is to just say, we are supposed to look around. Even in the midst of dark, whatever difficult days, there are things that God has put around us that are hilarious. And we should notice them and appreciate them. I think God laughs. I think God has a sense of humor. And so what I think I bring to the marriage relationship, to the family situation, is we've got to laugh at ourselves. And she's really good at laughing at me. And so I have brought that into the marriage relationship. Marriage makes us better people because the purpose of marriage is to make you a better person. Sometimes that's wonderful and fun and easy. Other times, and more often, it's difficult to allow God to make those changes in us. Make us we are just resistant to it. Jesus talks about two different ways that we can handle life and difficulties of life. It's in a section that is known as the Sermon on the Mount, and it's at the beginning. So I talked about Genesis, which is the first book in the Old Testament, and Matthew is the first book in the New Testament. This chunk that we would call one sermon that Jesus gave. Jesus, the greatest teacher, influencer the world has ever known. And there's a 3-chapter piece where Jesus talks about all sorts of things in terms of how we are to connect with one another and treat one another and love one another. It's a masterpiece of teaching. And so in that Sermon on the Mount, in chapter 7, Jesus says these words that enter through the gates. And again, of this incredible teaching and instruction Jesus gives. Verse 13, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few that wide is the road. It's just kind of this wide road that they just kind of wander in and follow the other lemmings and then go off and miss the whole point of life and the whole reality of God's love for us and our need to respond to Him. And then the narrow pathway and the one that follow Jesus is a difficult, a small, narrow pathway that says I'm not just following Jesus a little bit, I'm surrendering my whole life to Jesus, and that's what it means to be a follower of this story, but someone who knows Jesus. That's the narrow pathway. It's reasonable to look at these verses and see it as a salvation piece, but it's also great wisdom in terms of how we just walk through life, how we make decisions in life, that there is the wide, natural, easy pathway on how we just do life and do marriage, and then there's life. The wide pathway is just the natural way. It is the pathway of sin and brokenness. It's just, if we don't think about it, left to our own devices, that's the pathway that we go down because it's just so easy. My wife and I, we drive. We currently work down in Casa Grande, and we make a drive down there together. We live in Phoenix, and we make that drive every day. And typically, I will drive down, and we will drop me off first. So then we'll pull up. I'll get out of the car. She'll get out, and then take the car and take off. Just a week and a half ago, we were making this trip, and I walked around, and for some reason, something that we did made somebody else upset. It was a big guy in a big truck, a menacing truck and a menacing driver, and he rolled down his window and he came over and he said, "That was incredibly rude." And he went all bleepity bleep on me. Bleepity bleep, 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 bleep. To my wife, he was bleepity bleeping. And so I was standing there, and the natural wide road response was boiling up inside me, ready to come out. And I looked at the wide eyes of my sweet wife sitting in the car, and I went, "Ah." So I said, "What are you talking about?" Which is not necessarily the narrow road response. It's more like a mid-size road response. You know, it wasn't as, I didn't bleepity bleep like I wanted to, but I really was going, "I have no idea what you're talking about." And he kept on bleepity bleeping as he walked off and as he drove off and all that. But the natural response, you know, in a situation like that, there's so many things I wanted to say that just kind of, without even thinking, boom, they come out. That's the wide road, natural, easy response. And in marriage and in difficulty challenges us too. So let me talk more deeply about the wide, natural, easy pathway when it comes to marriage. What is the natural response when things get difficult in life? Let's say you're surprised by something. There is a typical human response. We do one of two things. Let's say somebody jumps out at you, or somebody surprises you, or there's a monster coming. There's two ways that we respond. It's two different words. They start with the same letter. What is it? Fight or flight. Thank you so much. I knew you'd get this. First service, they kind of stumbled for a while, but I was told you're the smarter one. This is the second service. And so it's fight or flight. That's our natural response. We say that because that happens without us even thinking. That's the wide, natural road. Fight or flight. Somebody comes out and they scare us, and then, you know, some people, you've seen these videos, some people, they get scared and then boom, they just punch the face that came out to try to scare them. Have you ever seen those videos? Hilarious. Fantastic. They're just trying to scare somebody and they get clobbered right in the nose. It's really, I'd watch it again and again and again. That's the fight. That's the natural fight response. The flight response is you get scared and you just run. You just clobber over people or stumble over things. Equally hilarious. Okay, it's really fun to watch. The natural response is fight or flight. And unfortunately, our natural response in marriage is often fight or flight. In marriage, the natural response is often we just fight. We say, "You know what? We don't think about what's better for our relationship or what's better for our future or for our kids. We just think, I'm right, and I'm going to stand my ground, and I'm going to fight this one out." In my experience of meeting with and trying to help couples over many, many years, I've just watched that there's a progression of fighting. There's different kinds of fighting. And so I just want to kind of summarize. I think I've seen 4 different levels of fighting. Level 1 is when we fight occasionally and we make up. Those are good fights. Those are good fights. Those are natural fights. That's a part of the, and you make up, and you're usually stronger through that. Even though it's still difficult, it's still hard and it's still difficult and painful, and you get scared, in the middle of it when you're fighting and such. Level 2 is when you have level 2 fighting is will, and it just, you're not challenged through it. It just kind of, you're still okay. You're still committed. Everyone, you're just moving forward. Level 3, disagreement, fighting between the two of you. It seems like whenever you talk, if you talk long enough, you're going to start fighting or disagreeing. Whole way over there. Then you get there, and then you walk up and you're kind of bickering as you get up to the door. You ring the doorbell. They open the door, and you go, "Hi! Oh, we are so glad to be here." And then you walk in and you pretend like everything's okay. That's kind of the private fighting in marriage. That's level 3. Level 4 is when it goes public. Level 4 is when you fight on the way to the party. You get to the door. You open up the door. And then you're still bickering at each other once you get in, and you don't really care about what anyone hears or what anyone sees. And you just kind of keep going, okay, whatever, we'll see you at the end. I'll get my own ride home or whatever it is. That's level 4 fighting, where it goes public, and you actually do it in front of other people. Let me just tell you that if you're married and you're up in level 3, level 4, well then that becomes it's a tremendous challenge. It's a tremendous challenge to work through that, and God can give you the strength to do that. If you're dating, if you're considering marriage, what I've seen is if you're experienced level 3, I'm not going to go away. And so, but it's a natural thing to fight